If you love solitude, this is why. A deep Buddhist insight. Introduction. The beauty of solitude in a noisy world. In today's fast-paced world, where distractions are endless and social connections seem indispensable, solitude often carries a negative connotation. Many people associate it with loneliness or isolation. However, in Buddhism, solitude is not just a physical state but a profound inner journey toward self-discovery and enlightenment. Buddhist teachings suggest that solitude, when embraced correctly, is not an escape but a path to deeper wisdom and clarity. The Buddha himself attained enlightenment in solitude, meditating under the Bodhi tree. Many monks and spiritual seekers throughout history have retreated into seclusion to cultivate insight. But why is solitude so powerful? And how can it help transform our lives? Let's dive deep into this Buddhist perspective on solitude and uncover its hidden treasures. Chapter 1. The Buddhist view on human origins and solitude. The cyclical nature of existence. While many religions present a clear beginning and end to human existence, Buddhism offers a different perspective. Life is not a straight path but an endless cycle, samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Imagine life as a flowing river rather than a straight road with a fixed starting point and an end point. This river never stops moving, carrying beings from one existence to another, driven by the forces of karma, actions and their consequences, and past conditions. Our thoughts, actions, and intentions today shape our destiny in the future. The story of the poisoned arrow. The Buddha did not dwell on the ultimate origin of the universe. Instead, he told a famous story about a man who was shot by a poisoned arrow. When someone came to help him, instead of allowing the arrow to be removed, the man insisted on knowing who shot it, what kind of wood it was made from, and what poison was used. Meanwhile, the poison spread, and death became inevitable. The Buddha used this story to emphasize a crucial lesson, rather than endlessly debating metaphysical questions. We should focus on the suffering we experience now and how to overcome it. This leads to a profound insight. Humans often seek answers in the external world. But the most important journey is the one within. Solitude and the path to self-discovery. Connecting this idea to solitude, we see that seeking external answers can sometimes lead us astray. Many people fear solitude, but in reality, solitude is not inherently negative. It is an opportunity to turn inward, to confront and understand our own illusions, anxieties, and pains. Imagine being lost in a dark forest at night. If you keep running aimlessly, panic will only grow. But if you sit still, breathe, and observe, you might start noticing small signs guiding you toward the way out. Solitude is similar, when approached correctly. It is not a burden but a wise teacher. Right finger a simple practice. Spend a few minutes each day sitting in silence, doing nothing. Observe your thoughts and emotions as they arise and disappear. Over time, you will realize that you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them. Chapter 2. Why solitude is essential in Buddhism. 1. Solitude as a path to wisdom. Buddhist scriptures emphasize that wisdom arises in silence. The Buddha himself often retreated into solitude to meditate and gain deeper insights. He spent long periods alone under the Bodhi tree before attaining enlightenment. His life serves as a powerful testament to the role of solitude in spiritual awakening. Many enlightened beings throughout history, forest monks in Thailand, Zen masters in Japan, and hermits in the Himalayas, have sought out solitude as a means of deep transformation. Why? Because when we are alone, we are no longer performing for others, we are no longer distracted by external validation. Instead, we turn inward and begin to observe the patterns of our own mind. Imagine a candle flickering in the wind. The flame is unsteady, always changing due to external forces. But if you place the candle in a still room, it burns steadily, unwavering. This is what solitude does for the mind. It removes the disturbances and allows wisdom to arise naturally. Personal insight. Many people misunderstand solitude as loneliness. But there's a significant difference. Loneliness is feeling disconnected from others, while solitude is a deliberate choice to connect with yourself. When practiced correctly, solitude becomes a wellspring of creativity, clarity, and inner peace. 2. Escaping the illusions of the world. Modern society is driven by constant stimulation, social media, news, entertainment, and interpersonal drama. We are constantly bombarded with information, opinions, and comparisons. This creates the illusion of busyness and importance. But in reality, it often leads to mental exhaustion and a fragmented sense of self. Buddhism teaches that the world is full of illusions. Much like a dream, solitude allows us to step away from these illusions and see things as they truly are. A famous Buddhist metaphor compares the mind to a pond. If the water is constantly disturbed by wind, by rain, by thrown stones, it remains murky. And we cannot see to the bottom. But when the water is still, it becomes clear, and we can see our reflection. In the same way, solitude allows our minds to settle, revealing our true nature. Example: take social media, for instance. When you constantly engage with it, your mind is flooded with external influences, what others think, what they are doing, how they appear. But when you take a break, when you step back and sit in solitude, you realize how much of it was unnecessary noise. In those moments of quiet, you reconnect with your authentic self. Personal insight: I once tried a week-long digital detox and spent more time alone in nature. At first, my mind kept reaching for distractions. I felt the urge to check my phone, to do something. But after a few days, I felt a deep sense of peace. I realized how much of my mental energy had been tied to things that didn't truly matter. Solitude, I found, is not empty, it is full of presence. 3. Overcoming fear of being alone. Many people fear solitude because it forces them to confront their own minds. In daily life, we are constantly distracted by work, by conversations, by entertainment. But when we are alone, the thoughts that we usually push away come to the surface. This can be uncomfortable, even frightening. However, Buddhism teaches that instead of running away from these thoughts, we should face them with mindfulness and compassion. The mind, when left unchecked, often magnifies fears and anxieties. But when we sit with them, observe them, and understand them, they begin to lose their power. Zen story. There is a Zen story about a young monk who was terrified of being alone in the forest at night. Every sound, the rustling leaves, the howling wind, sent shivers down his spine. One day, his master told him, "Go deep into the forest and sit alone until you conquer your fear." At first, the monk was paralyzed with terror. Every shadow seemed menacing, every noise a threat. But as he continued to sit, something changed. He realized that his fear was not coming from the outside world but from his own mind. The rustling leaves were just leaves. The howling wind was just the wind. Eventually, he felt a deep sense of peace. He understood that fear itself was an illusion. Personal insight. I once spent a night alone in a remote cabin, far from city lights and noise. At first, every creak of the wood, every gust of wind made me uneasy. But as the night went on, I realized that nature was simply doing what it always does. I was the one projecting fear onto it. That night taught me a valuable lesson. Most of the things we fear are just stories we tell ourselves. Chapter 3. The psychological and spiritual benefits of solitude. In a world that constantly demands our attention, social media notifications, work responsibilities, and the opinions of others, it is easy to lose ourselves in the noise. But true wisdom and peace arise when we turn inward. Solitude is not loneliness, it is a path to self-discovery and inner strength. 1. Solitude helps in deep self-reflection. The Buddha taught that one of the greatest causes of suffering is ignorance of our own minds, desires, and attachments. We often react impulsively, driven by unconscious fears and habitual patterns. But how can we understand ourselves if we never take the time to observe our thoughts and emotions? Solitude offers this opportunity. When we step away from external distractions, we gain clarity about our inner world. We start recognizing our attachments, whether to material things, relationships, or even ideas about who we should be. This self-awareness is the first step toward liberation. Example: imagine someone who constantly seeks validation on social media. They may feel anxious if their posts don't receive enough likes or comments. But if they spend time alone, away from these external influences, they might realize that their self-worth should not be dependent on others' approval. They begin to find confidence from within rather than from external recognition. Reflection exercise. Try spending 1 hour alone without distractions, no phone, no music, no books. Simply observe your thoughts. You might be surprised at how much you learn about yourself. 2. Enhancing concentration and mental clarity. One of the core practices in Buddhism is mindfulness and meditation, both of which require a focused mind. In a world filled with distractions, solitude becomes a powerful tool for sharpening our ability to concentrate. This is why monasteries and meditation retreats are often located in secluded areas, deep in the mountains, forests, or remote temples. These environments allow practitioners to cultivate deep awareness, undisturbed by the chaos of urban life. Example: think about a writer trying to finish a book in a noisy cafe. Every few minutes, they get interrupted by conversations, by phone notifications, by the need to check emails. Now imagine the same writer in a quiet cabin in the mountains. With no internet, their mind settles, thoughts flow more clearly, and their creativity blossoms. Similarly, when we embrace solitude, our mental clutter dissolves, and we experience true clarity. Practical tip: if you struggle with focus, try setting aside at least 10 minutes a day in complete silence, away from distractions. Over time, you'll notice an improvement in your ability to concentrate. 3. Strengthening emotional resilience. Many people feel uncomfortable being alone because they associate solitude with loneliness. But solitude is actually a powerful teacher that helps us build inner strength and emotional resilience. When we spend time alone, we learn to rely on ourselves for happiness rather than seeking constant external validation. We become less affected by societal pressures, criticism, or the fear of missing out. This creates a deep sense of inner stability. Example: Ajahn Chah, a renowned Thai forest monk, once said, "If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace." His own spiritual journey involved long solitary retreats in the jungle, where he confronted his fears, desires, and attachments. Through solitude, he developed profound wisdom and emotional resilience. Just like Ajahn Chah, when we embrace solitude, we stop seeking happiness in fleeting external pleasures and start discovering an unshakable peace within ourselves. Challenge: spend one weekend alone, without seeking external entertainment. Instead of watching TV or scrolling through social media, go for a walk, meditate, or simply sit in silence. Notice how your mind reacts. Do you feel uncomfortable, restless, or at peace? Chapter 4. How to cultivate meaningful solitude. In a world that glorifies busyness and constant connection, solitude can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. However, true solitude is not about loneliness. It is about creating space for deep self-reflection and inner peace. When practiced intentionally, solitude becomes a path to clarity, wisdom, and a more meaningful life. Here's how you can cultivate meaningful solitude in a way that feels natural and fulfilling. 1. Start with short periods of silence. If you're not used to being alone, start small. Spend 10 to 15 minutes a day in silence, no phone, no distractions, just observing your breath and thoughts. This may feel strange at first, as our modern minds are accustomed to constant stimulation. Imagine stepping into a quiet room after being in a crowded, noisy marketplace. At first, the silence might feel overwhelming, but soon, it becomes soothing. Example: try this. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Sit in a comfortable spot. Close your eyes, and simply breathe. If thoughts arise, let them pass like clouds in the sky, without chasing or resisting them. The goal is not to force silence but to observe it. Over time, you may find these moments of stillness become something you look forward to. Personal insight: when I first started practicing solitude, I found it difficult to sit still without doing something productive. But as I allowed myself to just be, I discovered a quiet presence within me, something deeper than thoughts and emotions. That presence is always there, we just have to create space to notice it. 2. Engage in meditation and mindfulness. Solitude becomes truly powerful when combined with mindfulness. The Buddha taught that true freedom comes from observing our thoughts without attachment. When we learn to sit with ourselves, we see how often our minds chase after the past or worry about the future. Example: one simple meditation practice is to observe your breath. Inhale slowly, counting to 4. Hold for a moment. Exhale slowly, counting to 4. Repeat. As you do this, thoughts will come and go. This is natural. Instead of reacting to them, simply acknowledge their presence and return to your breath. Over time, you will develop the ability to observe your thoughts rather than be consumed by them. Personal insight. Many people think meditation means having an empty mind. But that's a misconception. The goal is not to stop thinking, it's to stop being controlled by thoughts. Just like watching waves on the shore, we can observe our thoughts come and go without being carried away by them. 3. Spend time in nature. Nature has always been a refuge for spiritual seekers. Many Buddhist monks meditate in forests, mountains, and by rivers because nature naturally brings a sense of peace and connection. Example: the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke about the healing power of walking meditation in nature. He suggested walking slowly, with full awareness, feeling each step connect with the earth. You can try this by walking barefoot on grass or simply sitting under a tree and listening to the wind. Personal insight. I once spent a weekend alone in a cabin by the mountains. At first, I felt restless without Wi-Fi or social media. But as I spent more time simply listening to the sounds of nature, I felt a deep sense of peace. The rustling leaves, the flowing water, it was as if nature itself was whispering wisdom. Solitude in nature doesn't feel lonely, it feels alive. 4. Reduce external stimuli. Our minds are constantly overstimulated by social media, notifications, and endless to-do lists. Meaningful solitude requires reducing this noise so we can hear the whispers of our own hearts. Example: try a day of digital detox. Turn off your phone, or at least social media, for a few hours. Instead of scrolling through content, read a Buddhist text, journal, or simply sit with a cup of tea in silence. You might be surprised at how much mental space this creates. Personal insight. One of the most powerful habits I developed was creating a sacred hour each morning. No phone, no emails, just time for reflection, reading, and silence. This small change transformed the way I experience my day. Solitude doesn't have to be about isolation, it's about creating space for deeper awareness. 5. Use solitude for self-inquiry. Solitude is not just about quieting the mind, it's also an opportunity for deep self-reflection. Ask yourself profound questions. Who am I beyond my roles and titles? What is truly important in my life? Am I living in alignment with my values? Journaling can be a powerful way to explore these questions. Write freely, without judgment, and see what arises. Often, the deepest truths emerge in silence. Example: the 13th century Zen master Dogen once said, "To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self." This means that by turning inward, we begin to see beyond our conditioned identities and experience a deeper sense of being. Personal insight. I once asked myself, if I had no job title, no possessions, no social identity, who would I be? At first, the question felt unsettling, but as I sat with it, I realized that beyond all external labels, there is something more fundamental, a presence, a pure awareness. That realization brought a sense of freedom. Chapter 5. The ultimate realization: you are never truly alone. In our modern world, solitude is often misunderstood. Many associate it with loneliness, emptiness, or even sadness. But from a Buddhist perspective, true solitude is not about being alone, it is about being fully present with yourself. When we understand this, we come to a profound realization: we are never truly alone. The Buddha taught that once we recognize our true nature, loneliness disappears. Why? Because we no longer see ourselves as separate from everything around us. Instead, we feel deeply connected to the entire universe. The illusion of separation. Most of our suffering comes from the belief that we are separate from others, from nature, even from the universe itself. This illusion creates feelings of isolation and fear. But in reality, everything is interconnected. Think of the ocean and its waves. A wave might believe it is separate from the ocean, but in truth, it has never been separate, it has always been part of the vast sea. In the same way, we may feel like individual, isolated beings, but we are always connected to the larger whole. Example: imagine walking alone in nature. At first, you might feel isolated, just one person in a vast landscape. But as you sit quietly and observe, you start noticing the sound of the wind, the rustling leaves, the birds singing. You begin to feel a deep connection with everything around you. This moment of awareness is a glimpse into the truth. You are never truly alone because you are a part of everything. Practice. The next time you feel lonely, step outside and observe nature. Look at the trees, the sky, or even a single flower. Remind yourself that you are part of this same beautiful, living universe. True solitude as self-discovery. A true practitioner of the path sees solitude not as isolation but as an opportunity for deep self-discovery. Instead of fearing being alone, they embrace it as a time to understand themselves more deeply. Think about the great spiritual teachers, monks, sages, and philosophers. Many of them spent long periods in solitude, not because they disliked people, but because they sought to understand the deeper truths of existence. Example: the Buddha himself spent 6 years in deep solitude before attaining enlightenment. During this time, he confronted his fears, desires, and illusions. By the end of his journey, he realized the ultimate truth: all beings are interconnected, and suffering arises from our mistaken belief in separation. This is why many Buddhist monks and practitioners seek solitude, not to escape the world, but to understand it more fully. Reflection question. Instead of asking, "Why am I alone?" try asking, "What can I learn from this moment of solitude?" You are connected to everything. When we shift our perspective, we begin to see that solitude is not loneliness, it is an invitation to experience oneness. Think about the air you breathe. It has passed through countless beings before reaching you, the same air that once flowed through ancient forests, through the lungs of great teachers, through the oceans and mountains. With every breath, you are connected to everything that has ever existed. Example: many Buddhist monks practice a meditation called interbeing, which helps them see their deep connection to everything. They contemplate how the water they drink was once a cloud, the book they hold came from a tree, the food they eat was made possible by the sun, the earth, and the hands of many people. When you see the world this way, how could you ever feel truly alone? Practice. The next time you eat a meal, take a moment to reflect on all the conditions that made it possible: the farmers, the rain, the sunlight, the earth. Feel gratitude for this deep connection. Final realization. Loneliness is a misunderstanding. The ultimate realization is this: loneliness is not a reality, it is a misunderstanding of reality. When we believe we are separate, we feel lonely. But when we awaken to the truth of interconnection, we see that we have never been alone, not even for a single moment. So the next time you find yourself in solitude, instead of resisting it, embrace it, see it as a gift, a chance to experience your true nature. And remember, you are never truly alone, because you are part of everything. Chapter 6. Applying solitude to modern life. In our fast-paced, hyper-connected world, solitude may seem like a luxury, or even an impossibility. However, true solitude isn't about escaping to a remote mountain or cutting off all human contact. It's about cultivating an inner space of stillness, no matter where we are. By integrating moments of solitude into daily life, we can develop greater self-awareness, creativity, and peace. Here's how. 1. Balancing solitude with social life. Buddhism teaches the importance of the middle way, not extreme withdrawal, but not excessive attachment either. While solitude is transformative, humans are also social beings. The key is to balance time alone with meaningful connections. Example: consider the life of the Buddha. After years of extreme ascetic solitude, he realized that complete isolation wasn't the path to enlightenment. He returned to society, teaching others while maintaining his own quiet moments of reflection. Practical tip: set intentional boundaries for solitude. For example, have 1 hour in the morning just for yourself before engaging with others. Let solitude enhance your relationships. When you take time to reflect, you bring more clarity, presence, and emotional depth to your interactions. Personal insight: I used to think that being alone meant being disconnected, but I found that when I make time for solitude, I show up better in relationships, more patient, more understanding, and less reactive. Solitude doesn't separate us from others, it deepens our connection. 2. Using solitude for creativity. Many of the world's greatest artists, writers, and thinkers, Leonardo da Vinci, Virginia Woolf, Albert Einstein, have attributed their breakthroughs to solitude. When the mind is free from distractions, it can wander, explore, and make unexpected connections. Example: J.K. Rowling came up with the idea for Harry Potter while sitting alone on a delayed train. Without distractions, her imagination was free to create an entire magical world. Practical tip: try a solitude session. Block out an hour with no phone. No internet, no interruptions. Use it to write, paint, brainstorm, or simply think. Observe how ideas naturally emerge in moments of silence, while taking a shower, walking alone, or sitting quietly in a park. Personal insight: I've noticed that my most creative ideas come when I'm not trying to force them, when I'm walking alone, sipping tea in silence, or staring at the sky. Solitude is like a blank canvas. When we give ourselves space, creativity fills it. 3. Finding solitude in crowds. You don't have to retreat to a monastery to experience solitude. True solitude is an inner state. Even in a busy city, you can cultivate solitude through mindfulness and detachment. Example: the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh spoke about practicing solitude in motion. He described walking mindfully through a crowded airport, completely at peace, as if you were walking alone in the forest. Practical tip: try silent presence next time you're in a busy place. Pause. Observe without reacting. Notice the movement, the sounds, the flow of life, without getting caught up in it. Use noise-canceling solitude. Listening to calm music or wearing headphones in public spaces can create a feeling of separation while being physically present. Personal insight: I once sat alone in a crowded cafe, simply observing. Instead of checking my phone or engaging in conversation, I watched people, how they moved, their expressions, their energy. It was a moment of pure solitude, yet I felt deeply connected to life. 4. Making solitude a daily practice. Like any habit, solitude becomes more powerful when practiced consistently. The key is to build small rituals into daily life. Over time, these moments of solitude accumulate, leading to deeper self-awareness and peace. Example: many Zen monks wake up before dawn to sit in silence, cultivating stillness before the world awakens. You don't have to be a monk to adopt this practice. Simply waking up 15 minutes earlier for quiet reflection can transform your day. Practical tip: morning solitude. Begin your day with meditation, journaling, or quiet tea drinking before checking your phone. Silent walks. Walk without music or podcasts. Just listen to the world around you. Digital detox. Set aside a few hours a week without social media or notifications. Personal insight: I started a practice of Sunday solitude, a few hours of complete quiet, with no phone, no external input. At first, it felt uncomfortable, but over time, I began looking forward to it, like a reset button for my mind. Solitude, I realized, is not empty, it is full of presence. Conclusion: the transformative power of solitude. If you love solitude, it is because your soul craves something deeper than superficial interactions. It seeks truth, wisdom, and inner peace. Buddhism teaches that solitude is not about loneliness but about self-liberation. It is a gateway to enlightenment, a path where one finds true clarity and freedom. So, embrace solitude. Let it be your teacher, your sanctuary, and your guide. In the silence, you may just hear the whispers of enlightenment.